Hello, my name is Jerry Wise, and I'm the director and founder of Jerry Wise Relationship Systems. And this video is entitled, Getting Your Childhood Out of You. I've been working with folks for close to 40 years now and trying to help them to heal from their past and to get what's in them out of them. I'm a relationship and life coach, coaching people in self-differentiation based on a family systems approach, a Murray-Bowen family systems approach. And today I'd like to share with you an accounting of someone who shared their story with me, and they gave me permission to share it, though it is anonymous. Names are changed and situations are changed just a little bit, so that we wouldn't identify her, though I don't know that she would really even matter or she would even care all that much, but I care. It's a story she's blessed me with being able to share with you. I had done a video on healing the pain of growing up in which I shared a story about Amelia, and she shared her story of pain growing up, which triggered this person who wanted to share with me her story. And it, of course, is a very painful one. Let me grab my glasses real quick. Sorry. We're going to call her Joanne. Joanne grew up in a family that was alcoholic and had a narcissistic mother, which was very painful for her. This recounting is a recounting when she was 6 years old. And if you can imagine a 6-year-old going through this, how difficult that would have been and how painful, horribly painful it would be. The reason I want to share this is so that, number one, you don't feel alone, because many of us have experienced uncomfortable childhoods, difficult, painful, traumatic childhoods, and that you're not alone, and that there is help and healing for that if we choose recovery and getting someone who can coach us towards self-differentiation, getting that out of us so that we can truly be an adult. She begins, after listening to the pain and loneliness that Amelia experienced growing up, a paralyzing fear of pain and loneliness began to well up from somewhere deep within me that I did not remember existed. I felt trapped in a place I had forgotten about. My mind turned to mush, and I was in a fog that I had not experienced for quite some time. Now that my mother had been gone for over a year, I had no idea this pain was still brewing deep within. I felt blindsided, and I experienced fear and loneliness again, like I had so long ago. I began to realize that the very last time I felt any kind of unconditional love and acceptance from a family member in my childhood home was when my sister Anne left for college. I'm the last of 5 children, and I was the unexpected child, which is nothing unusual, for there are many unexpected children. But for my mother, it was at the age of 42 that she had me. My mother had had 3 girls and then had a long anticipated boy that arrived. She was done, in her mind, having children. 6 years later, I was born. I have but one warm and tender memory of my mother soothing and holding me. She never kissed me unless I initiated it. The words "I love you" were very few and far between, and again I had to initiate it. The words, I have memories of my sister Anne when I was 6, when she left home. I remember being with her everywhere she went. I realize now it was because her countenance was warm and accepting. She was fun-loving and has a positive demeanor, even to this day. Anne was the closest thing to a mom in my early childhood home. We shared the same bedroom. We had twin beds, but often when I had a bad dream or I was just scared of the dark, I would slip into her bed and she never complained. She would help me feel that I was safe and okay in the dark. The dark was very, very scary for me. And when I needed to go downstairs to the bathroom, I would wake her and she would take me without complaint. I felt so safe and secure with her by my side. I felt loved and accepted in my needs and wants. She was the one I remember. I do not remember my mother or my brother, who was just 6 years older than me. Anne was my caregiver and my sibling who loved me. After she left home for college, my world would change in many ways that I never imagined possible. My security, my protection, my comfort drastically changed. I seemed to become invisible to everyone in my household. The only attention I seemed to attract was especially from my mother. And it was negative attention almost all the time. My brother hated me. I was an object to him, to do with me what he wanted in the moment. He would tell me over and over what a dumb, stupid person I was and that nobody would ever like or want to know me. He would try to convince me that my brother-in-law did not like little girls who cried. I believed him. I was scared of my brother-in-law and tried very hard not to cry in front of anyone. I still have a hard time crying and showing my emotions even today. As we grew older, my brother was just always so angry. He would beat on me and treat me cruelly when my parents were out. I was scared of him and did not want to be left alone with him. My mother would not believe me when I would tell her what he would do when they were not around. She would say, "I don't see any bruises. You're just so dramatic. Why are you always causing trouble?" I remember still to this day the first few nights sleeping alone in my bedroom after Anne left home. My bedroom seemed so big now, and I was afraid. I needed to go downstairs to the bathroom. I turned on every light as I made my way down the stairs. I made it, but I just wanted someone to hold me and tell me it was going to be okay. I was sad my sister was gone. I was sad and lonely in this new environment without my sis. I was scared. I needed my mom. I knocked on my mom and dad's bedroom door. I remember feeling extremely anxious. I said, "Mommy, I am scared. Can I sleep in here?" My mother wakes up and looks at me in her stern and demeaning voice, and she says, "Scared? What do you mean you're scared? There's nothing to be scared about. You're not sleeping in here. Go to your room." I ran out of there as fast as I could, crying, frightened, and shutting all the lights off as I went. I jumped into Anne's bed and I cried and I cried and I cried. "Anne, I need you. I'm scared. Mommy hates me. Anne, please come back home. I need Mommy. I need you. I do not belong here in this house. I do not like it here. I feel so alone, so lost, so unworthy to be loved. There's something wrong with me. My mom and my brother seem to hate me. I'm always doing something wrong. No one protects me. My dad is numbed out, disconnected, and is not responsible or responsive. He cannot be the man of the household. His coping skills are lacking, and alcohol is a part of his coping. My parents just seem to vegetate in our home. There is no love, no connection, no happiness, no joy, no laughter, no snuggles, no kisses. It is either chaotic or it's stone cold quiet. Anne, you showed me love and acceptance, and when you left, all that ended in my 6-year-old world. Everything continued in a downward spiral. I did not know then what I know now. My mom and dad's marriage was in a downward spiral, and my dad's drinking began to be more and more out of control during my teenage years. This is when loneliness began to be my friend. It was not a welcome friend. I would watch other children and they would seem happy, unlike me. Their mothers would be so proud of them. They would smile and hug and kiss them. I would think, they must be doing it right, unlike me. I have to figure this out. I have to change. I have to be good, perfectly good, loving and perfectly loving, and do everything my mom tells me in the most meticulous way. It was no use. It always failed. Loneliness was excruciating. I felt so alone and unworthy in this world. How could anyone love me? I began not to love me. I hated my very self. In my mom's eyes, nothing I did was good enough. If I did do something well, then she would bring it down by dumping all her pity and laying on the guilt trip of how she was never able to do such things. She never was allowed to go to college. She was never allowed to work outside the home. She would tell everyone how she had encouraged me to do more, resulting in all of my accomplishments, as a narcissistic mom would. She would not tell us how proud she was of us. That would produce a prideful attitude in us. It seemed to her that the feelings of worth were to be sacrificed. It was hopeless. It was useless. And I gave up. I gave up ever trying to be someone, to be me, to be Joanne. This is a painful story told from a 6-year-old's perspective of what was going on in her life. I know Joanne is not alone. There are many who have many, many stories like this. So what can Joanne do to get her childhood out of her, to resolve, to heal, to deal with these feelings that were so difficult for her growing up? Well, first of all, I think of going back in time, journaling, writing about events that happened, putting it down on paper, seeing it in black and white affirms truly what was going on at the time and how you felt. It makes it become more real rather than someone just saying, no, that never happened, or no, you're just exaggerating, no, that's not true. So go back in time and make a record of what had happened. Read it through. Another thing that we can do is begin to, if we aren't in touch with that, we can begin to, if we're not in touch with our feelings about this type of journaling, we can think about our own children, if we have children, and think about them being at 6 years old and they are experiencing this, or you're doing that to them. How would they feel? How would your little 6-year-old, that's your own child, feel about being treated this way? And that begins to give us some connection to the feelings as to how that might feel. We can also use this journaling to begin to expel it from ourselves. And with Joanne in particularly, she lives in a rural area and out on the farm, and so she can go out into the field where no one's listening, no one cares, nobody's going to hear her, and she reads this. And I would suggest reading it in another voice than your own normal adult voice. Read it in a different voice. Either a low, after listening to the pain and loneliness that Amelia experienced growing up, you can read it in a different voice. Or you can read it, my brother hated me. I was an object to him to do with what he wanted in the moment. And we read it with such intensity and such emotional expression. And we do that, and do it a dozen times. Read it in that expressive, angry, or traumatized voice so that it can come out and so that it can be expressed. We also can take a look at this journaling and how do I play this out in my role as an adult? How am I living this way in my life now? The lonely, uncared about, unloved, worthless. How is that getting played out in my marriage, in my family? And identify that so that we can begin to change those behaviors in the here and now. I always advise clients to, when you are in living your life, that you would tend to feel less and observe more, or feel less and think more. Not because I wish to discount the feelings. The feelings are so intense, they're there, and that's why if we're reading it very intensely and owning and accepting those feelings. But then as we're living, we want to be careful not to get caught in those, what I call systems feelings. And then we end up reacting and being an adult out of those feelings. So we want to think more, observe more, and feel less, and absorb less from interacting with others. And also, we don't want to argue out of reactive or systems feelings. We don't want to argue out of this whole journaling that I've just read to you that's within us, and argue with our spouse, or argue with our parents, or argue with our siblings. And I would recommend the video on true feelings versus systems feelings, and that might help you also further. I have another video entitled that. Don't feel like you have to protect the integrity of others. Meaning, if someone was wrong, such as parents, and they were wrong, and it's not about blaming them, it's about fully accepting that they were wrong and this was wrong in what they did. I realize in Joanne's case, her mother and her parents had very bad childhoods. They were abused, they were mistreated. So I understand that it's a multi-generational problem that just keeps flowing down the generations. And so it's not about blaming them, it's about I don't have to protect their integrity when I'm doing this work. certainly don't work it out with your perpetrator. Don't work it out with your mom and dad. Don't work it out with your sister and brother, because these are old archaeological feelings. We don't work those out now with them. We learn to be an adult with them. Because we don't need to work it out with them. We need to work it out within us. Oftentimes when we tried to work it out with them, we end up making things worse, or it becomes more intense, or they don't know what we're talking about, or they're still in denial, or all kinds of issues in that way. So we're looking for them to change or be sympathetic or empathetic, and probably they won't be empathetic or caring at that point, because they may feel their own shame, they may feel their own guilt. Now certainly, if they're coming to you and say, I'm so sorry for what I did, I'd like to talk with you about that, well then you're free to do that. But we don't use them as a way to get that out of us. We use them as a way to be an adult with them. How can I be an adult with these individuals? And again, we want to be our age. We want to act our age when we interact with these folks, our parents, our siblings. And we don't have to live in denial about it. We certainly say, no, that's not exactly the childhood I remember. That's not the way I felt it. Well, aren't you just blaming me? No, I'm just saying that's not the way I remember it. And no, I don't have to blame you. It's not the way it was for me. You can remember it any way you want to remember it. I remember it the way I remember it. So these are a few tips you can use. There are more. I wanted to share this experience with you today, and I wanted to share Joanne's experience of her 6-year-old little girl having a traumatic experience and how she can work on that as an adult. I want to share with you that if you need further help, or you'd like resources, or you'd like to contact me, use my email address. You can go to my website, www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. You can sign up for our email address. You can go to the Facebook page of the same name. And I hope those resources will be a help to you. I really want to thank you today for listening, and have a great day.